From CNBC, we have investor home purchases jump for the first time in 2 years. Here's what that means for buyers. Real estate investor activity jumped 0.5% from a year ago, according to Redfin, and it's the first increase in activity since mid-2022. Interesting part to me is because around the mid-2022 is when you started seeing the impact of interest rates by the Fed being, they started increasing their Fed funds rate in March of 2022. And it's hard for me to identify whether it is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, is it that investors buying up the places has driven this median home price per square foot that we were just talking about in the previous segment of the show?
Right.
Or is it that it's everyone buying in, and then investors are like, okay, well, people are clearly have an appetite for having shelter in this form or fashion, so we're in now too. What do you think it is?
I think it's that the appetite is still there, and whenever regular people go out and buy houses, they're still not, some of them need work, some of them are outdated, and people are still trying to buy these houses and get in. Now the opportunity for the investor is that I can get the house, get it at a discounted price because we know how to negotiate the deal, whatnot, but they're able to then put it back on the market. Somebody who likes that house and they want to buy it at that price because the house is worth for whatever, they think is an affordable, purchase for them. But I think that they lead the way, and then people have more inventory to be able to then go out and purchase. And the other way around is like, there's just a plethora of other houses that need work, and not everybody has that money to be able to put that in. So when investors buy a house, I think it facilitates, regular people buying because the house is already ramped up. And
do you think that's a large percentage of it, though? Do you think that's a majority of the investment homes that are being bought is because it needs a lot of work? Or it's just that there's people that have the cash access or the hard money lines to go buy them and just buy them up, and then that's what's happening? What do you think
I wouldn't say like, hey, every investor's like, hey, I'm making the neighborhood good and I'm going to clean it up. It's obviously for a profit. So I think if they're able to, make enough profit, whether they flip the house, they get what they want, they're still putting out a better house out in that neighborhood. So I think that it helps them out either way.
So already this year in the first quarter, real estate investors purchased about 44,000 homes. That's so at that same pace, if you annualize that, that's 176,000 homes. Now in a year where we normally have about 4 million homes change hands, you look at that number, you're like, oh, that's not a lot. Let me ask you a question. What would 176,000 more families look like owning those homes? 176,000. That's still significantly a lot. Yeah. That's like your family owns one. I have one, and then there's still 175,998 people who are going to do it too.
And I think a lot of people probably think like, oh, investors are buying out everything, but there's only a certain amount of investors, right? And there's only a certain amount of people that are buying that much. So there's a lot more regular people out there that are looking to buy a house than there is investors looking to buy. Like, do they buy in bulk and in large quantities? They do. But there's still so many people in this world, in this country, that want to buy a house, that have the opportunity to buy a house. So yeah, it's only a small fraction of the purchases, the sales and the buys throughout the year, but it is significant enough for people to be able, like, if you have somebody in a neighborhood that's flipping houses that just focuses in that area, you can guarantee that you're going to have a nice house that's coming up in the market every so often when, people sell, that neighborhood, that house that nobody ever did anything to it. Eventually they got to sell, they got to move, or something's going to happen and someone's going to buy that property, whether they kept it up or not. It's another opportunity for somebody to come in and say, hey, I get to make money off of it, and then B, I get to provide a really nice house for somebody that wants to come into this neighborhood.
Yeah, and I understand there's a role for investors to play, especially because people who maybe can't afford, or they don't qualify, or maybe their credit's bad, or there's a reason why they can't get into home ownership, right, that they still need to have a roof over the head and they have to rent a place.
Yeah.
But one of the notes I wanted to talk to you about today is that, we've talked about this, though, is the amount of investor-owned properties being substantial enough to be noteworthy of discussing even is... it's important. It's really important because we've talked about, if you sit on your hands and you wait on the sidelines and you're waiting for this market crash to come around, the investors are not. Yes. And so if I'm sitting here with you right now and this report is saying 44,000 homes in the first quarter were bought by investors, that's 44,000 homes that did not go to someone who's sitting on their hands or waiting for a collapse or whatever the issue is that you're waiting for. I'm not talking about you can't qualify and you can't actually get into a home. I'm talking about if you can and you're being outgunned by these guys. This is part of the consequence of having that FOMO, not FOMO, but the fear of taking action, not right. FOMO, not fear of missing out, fear of taking action, because we said people are going to gobble up inventory. If you wait for 10%, drop 15, 20%,
Yeah.
someone's going to undercut you and go, oh, it's at a 5% drop or a 7% drop. You know what? That's good enough for me. I'm in. And now an investor owns it and you don't.
And that's that's why I encourage, a lot of our audience or, clients and anybody looking to buy a house to embody that investor mentality where they stay ready. They're constantly looking for deals. They're constantly on the prowl. They're constantly, looking for when that next deal is going to come out. And similar to you, if you're buying just your regular house, you have to be proactive. Before you could sit a while, wait for a house to come up on the market. But now you have to be literally like, you have to go in groups. You have to be working your network. You yourself also have the responsibility to be seeing where you can find a good deal as well. And I think it comes at a price that if you're just, hopefully waiting that deal is going to come and the realtor is going to find it, sometimes it will happen, but it takes a lot longer than if you were proactive, you're searching, and you start looking at properties through a lens of like, well, hey, if this isn't the property that I can get into right now that I want, well, how can this still help me to get through to the next step? And I think that's where people, really put in that emotional lens to it where they're like, I don't want to buy that house because I'm going to be in here for 20, 30 years. When in reality, it's like you're just utilizing this for the next 5 years. You hedge against, the rise of living right now. You secure a payment that you're able to make. And then once things start to shift, you're in a way better position. You have a lot more of a foundation to be able to then make that jump to that next property, start a business with the earnings of, the seller property, or you just have more options financially to be able to have a more stable life once you have a property. And I've noticed that in young buyers as well, where they, bought 2 years ago and now they're looking to either sell or take out money from their property. And they're like, I have thousands of dollars in my house. Like, how can I utilize this? And I think that's something that, also comes with the gift of being able to own a house, that you have a lot more options when it comes down to it.
Yeah. And, the thing that is also noteworthy in this is that, in describing what a real estate investor means in the housing classical definition, this number and these figures we're talking about are investor purchases that are reflected by the purchaser being a limited liability company, LLC, short for that, or another form of company or a trust, and they're buying it for the purpose of income. But what's not mentioned in here? The mom and pop buyer. The people that we know that they're buying it themselves, they're buying one or two. How many tens of thousands of people have done that this year already that are not counted in this number? So as we're sitting here saying, 44,000 homes this year have already been bought by investors, and that's on pace for 176,000, that does not include the private people, private citizens out here that are not doing it in a corporate structure, buying a place that they're using for a rental investment purpose.
And you notice that, a lot of the people start with their primary house and then they turn that into an investment property.
Right.
So it's like there's a lot more, I would say, hidden investors out there. But I guess by definition, if you bought it under LLC trust and it's for profit, then you're an investor. But there's plenty of mom and pop shops that own multiple houses.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 100, but I know a few like regular people that own like 10, 15 houses.
Mm-hmm.
And and they all bought those slowly, little by little, accumulating through regular loans and stuff like that. And I noticed that if you buy it for your primary purpose, it doesn't go down as an investor. But if you then turn around after a year and turn it into an investment, it is still an investment.
Right, and unfortunately, this is kind of a more nuanced measurement because it's new. It's purchases that are made. And at the time of purchase, the purchaser is already a LLC.
Yeah.
The people you're talking about that like you own your house, I own my house, and then we move and then we turn that one into a rental. That's not in this figure.
No.
And so there's someone in this article is quoted like there's not much evidence that there's crowding out of home buyers from the market. I'm like, well, yeah, there kind of is because you're arguing the statistic. You're saying, oh well. 20% of the people, 20% of people that are buying are investors, and 80% are homeowners. Well, that's fine, but that's by this definition.
Yeah.
What if it's 25% are investors or 30% are investors?
Because if you start counting, like if it converts from your primary to your secondary to your investment on your
Right.
title, then automatically doesn't that turn into an investment? It should be looped into like now an investment property.
Well, right, and then there's the hybrid where you live in it and then you convert something. We talk a lot about ADUs here. You build an ADU that is on your lot that is not connected to your house. You do a garage conversion. You do a build up. I mean, there's all other types of ways where the home itself could be your primary residence, but also have an investment part to it. And in that case, and that's not an LLC either. So I think there's kind of there's like the main definition number we're talking about here, but there's also a veiled kind of semi-unknown total of actually how many properties and how many people have some rental part of their place that is generating income for them. And that trend is changing very quickly among people who have a lot of equity, a lot of space, or they're younger and they're looking for their home to pull some weight on the monthly cost.
So just in these last couple of weeks, I mean, not weeks, like years since, this ADU gold rush has come about, a lot of the buyers and people that I speak to are already looking for properties that they can do this too. So they're looking for bigger lots, they're looking for areas that are zoning to be able to build multi-unit properties. And that's something that I do see as a trend where people are looking like, hey, if I'm going to buy this house, how much can I actually make money off this house to be able to pay for my expenses? And it also comes out of, I think, a very smart decision, because now you're leveraging an asset that you're going to be living in it, but it's also going to carry its weight if you're able to set yourself up in that right way, where it helps cover that expense a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a little bit of a map on this article, nice. And I kind of drawing on the map because there's a defined area where the title is U.S. metros with highest rates of investor home purchases, and broadly it's everything that's west of New Mexico and south of San Francisco, or east of Texas and south of Kentucky. So
like nobody wants to live in these areas.
Like the Midwest has like this huge gap section, and then everything like below below Kentucky and the San Francisco like line going left to right on your map, it is everything's below that. So I think there's something to that as far as the amount, like the dollar, also maybe the opportunity to buy more investment properties in those areas. But what was, again, kind of surprising is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the dots on the map are in California, where you have,
and they're all in a darker range of blue,
and they're all along the coastline. So if you look at where they're all kind of clustered, they're all on the coastline. They're up and down the coast. So it looks like it's from L.A. Well, maybe L.A. Santa Barbara area up north.
Yeah,
and there's a handful of them. And then there's like these other dots that are kind of like scattered around all these other states in the southeast. So it's like California is crazy expensive by one hand. On the other, people want to live here. They're willing to do what it takes to stay here, or to have that lifestyle, whatever the personal reason is. Investors are seeing the same thing. Like, well, fine, we'll just buy places then. And in some of these areas, you see that there's a higher percentage of purchases by investors than there are than across the country.
Yeah, and it's crazy because prices only continue to go up, and it's just like anything. You see people buy designer or, brand things for that matter. It doesn't matter what the price is to them. If they really want it, they're going to, do whatever it takes for them to be able to get it if it's within their means.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that I see with houses. I mean, there's the people that, no, I'm never going to buy. I'm never going to be too expensive. Okay, you might not. But then there's people that are like, that's fine with me.
Yeah,
it is what it is. I gotta get it. I want it.
It's that cash flow thing again. It's like the price tag may be the price tag that one time you buy it, but if you're going to be able to rent it for more than what it's costing you every month to operate it, then that's clearly what this is representing here for people who are investing in buying properties, and especially if they're doing, I'll say, corporate real estate purchases, where it's like it's a group or it's a LLC or a organization that's buying them. It's clearly a play for obtaining as many as possible. Like off camera, we call it the hungry hippo strategy. Get as much of the market as you can, but then also holding it for the long haul, because the prices will continue to increase. Now, we have had some naysayers, and I understand where this is coming from, so give me a second here. We have had some naysayers like, prices just can't continue to go up forever. Remember the great financial crisis of 2008? Yeah, of course I do. We had a front row seat to it. We lived through it every single GD day. But here's the difference. We had a lot of unqualified people that were qualifying to get homes, which was pushing up prices that was not backed by their actual ability to pay back. That is part of the problem. I'm not going to let the banks off the hook. I'm not going to let the Federal Reserves off the hook. I'm not going to let the International Monetary Funds and all those people off the hook. Definitely going to let the politicians off the hook. But the truth is that like wicked tornado and torrent of variables that all led to that collapse, of the global financial collapse of 2008, 2009, was you go all the way upstream, and the banks allowed for people to be qualified that actually couldn't make payments at the end of the day. That is different than right now, because the qualification standards, the type of loans, number one, number two, the standards of underwriting, the qualification steps that the bank's going for, and also you have that on the regulatory side, there's not a tolerance for the type of nonsense that happened back then. Complete rules and policies have changed because of that. And again, I probably sound like I'm defending all that. My argument here is that if you're saying, oh, well, Brian's mentioning prices are going to go up forever and rent's going to go up forever, it's like, okay, well, you can go look at a chart for the last 50 years and then go point out the argument where we're wrong there. You can't make that argument in the last 3 years, 5 years. Oh, it's going to crash. It's going to soften. Okay, fine. But then you're also saying that you have a crystal ball that says which variable is going to fall first, which shoe is going to drop first, which leg from the table is going to get pulled first, and then maybe that could turn out to be true. But the global financial crisis compared to now, I don't think people should be holding their breath on prices dropping.
You've been holding your breath for a long time.
No, it's a long thought. I know it's a long thought. Someone's going to be like, God, I took forever to put a long thought out there. Well, thanks for listening.
Some people probably just, at this point, they're too far in. They want it to happen because, they can't be wrong.
I look, and I'm not going to say that it can't happen. I'm just saying that the way things have changed over the last 15 years since then is such that the percentage of probability that is going to all out collapse like it did and have 45, 50% price cuts on real estate, because it was actually correcting the market of where it actually should have been based on actual qualification. That's the problem. And because the market has taken care of that I don't think is the impending doom and threat at this time. Okay.